In this section, you will learn meeting best practices for scheduling meetings. You'll also learn how to send a meeting invite, what specifically to put in the invite, how to send it, what is the right time to send it. And then lastly, we're going to do a quick exercise to practice how to specify in the meeting description, like what to write in there. It's related to what we talked previously about the purpose and the agenda and how to send that out. Let's start with a common but ineffective approach to scheduling a meeting. It's not uncommon for somebody to send an email saying, hey, let's have a meeting, let me know your availabilities. And then somebody else responds with, oh yes, I'm quite flexible on Tuesday and Wednesday. How about next Wednesday? Or then somebody else says, yeah, what about Wednesday? And then somebody else responds, oh, sorry, it doesn't work anymore. What about this day? And then somebody else chimes in. So then you've got a lot of back and forth emails. And on this slide is an example of how that could look like. But I think we've all seen and experienced how ineffective that is. Everybody just throwing ideas and times out and then having a hard time actually finding a time. And obviously, if you all part of the same company, you might be able in Outlook, might be able to see when people are available based on if they have their Outlook calendars up to date. But if you're from different companies, one like clients with company internal people, it's hard to sometimes find a time when to schedule the meeting. A more effective way, and this is independent whether you're scheduling a meeting for people inside the company or clients, customers, or you just don't see exactly their availabilities based on their calendars, is to always suggest an exact time and day for a potential meeting. And in addition to suggesting the specific time, also suggesting specific alternatives. So a good example on this slide would be, would Tuesday 8 till 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time work? Alternatively, Wednesday 9 a.m. Another one would be, would the following times work? December 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then one of them is the preferred time. Going in with a default time, like a suggested time, has a bunch of advantages. The biggest one is you're putting a line in the sand. And it's clear that this is the default time. And so now it's easier for people to just say, yes, that works. Or yes, one of the alternatives work. So people don't need to think about which time they come back with. It's easier for them to just say yes to one of the times. And number two, since you put that line in the sand, it's harder for people to say no to all of these options. Since it's already basically the default time, for somebody to say like, oh no, I can't make it, is a little harder as opposed to if you just let people to decide for themselves. If you ask them what's my availability. That makes it more likely for people to move around their meetings and make sure that they can attend one of your times. And so the takeaway here, and this is really important, is to always suggest a specific time when you want to schedule a meeting. Even if you don't have a preferred time, let's say your calendar is totally empty next week and you have all the availability in the world, you still want to just come up with a time. Like, what about next Tuesday, 2 p.m.? As opposed to, I'm available all week. Because then you're going to get like all kinds of responses, and it's going to be harder to coordinate between, like, among a few attendees. And so always come up with a specific time. It's also good to specify the time zone and be as specific as possible. Another framework or mental framework I like to apply is to aim for a yes answer. Like, what do you need to write for the receiving person to be able to say yes? So if you specify exactly the time, when it's going to be, where they have to be, what is expected, agenda, etc., they can just go with yes, makes sense, as opposed to having to think and provide a more detailed response. The next point is about sending a meeting invite. And I would say this is probably already quite standard in most organizations to send an invite. If it's not on the calendar, the meeting doesn't exist. So if you align with somebody on a meeting for next week and you don't send an invite, they're not gonna attend it. Nobody's gonna block a time for themselves just because you aligned on it in an email. Obviously, always send a meeting invite. It's pretty straightforward. There's you put in a title, the meeting objective, purpose. Be specific as we discussed. Don't just call it sales or don't just call it survey, compensation. Be a little more specific about what the objective is of the meeting. Meeting attendees, makes sense. Location, dial in. Nowadays, obviously, it's mostly Zoom, MS Teams dial-ins. And then at the bottom, the last box here, summary of meeting context, purpose, expectations, and agenda. This is, I think, where most people make a mistake. They leave it empty. And this makes sense for casual informal meetings like a one-on-one, a coffee chat. But for the more important meetings, this is your opportunity to already set up the meeting in a professional and effective way by stating the context, stating the overall objectives, and then having the meeting agenda, the 3-4 bullet points already in here. So when people get the invite, but then also right before the meeting, they're able to open the meeting invite and quickly see and grasp what the meeting's purpose is, the overall objective, and then how the meeting will be structured and what is expected of them. And that's something I want to practice on the next slide. And so in this exercise here on the left-hand side, we have a text and the goal is to improve this meeting invite. Think of it in the meeting invite, in the bottom, in the description area, what you would put in there. So the context is, all as discussed with a few of you separately, we talked about what to do about our product launch. Jamie, you mentioned you would update the business case with the latest pricing forecasts, right? We should also discuss the press release for product A and talk to 50 plus priority customers to identify product consideration. Can somebody prepare this best, John? Now I would recommend you to stop the video, take 30 seconds, take a minute to reflect on this meeting description and how you would improve it. Welcome back. While you were hopefully thinking about how to improve this meeting invite, I also came up with my own improved version of this meeting invite, which you can see here on the right-hand side. Let me explain what I did here. The first sentence is about the context. Quick context, what the meeting is about. Like, why are we having this meeting? What's the big theme? This meeting is part of a broader project to launch a new product. I'd like to discuss the following topics in our next project meeting on Wednesday. So it's clear it's a project meeting as part of this broader project. It's next Wednesday. And obviously, since this would be part of an Outlook invite, you would already know exactly the day and the timing. And then 3 specific agenda items. Number 1, presenting the business case. And here I added this @Jamie, which I think is very powerful, of being clear who owns which agenda item. The next one, discuss and decide. Here, this is a decision point on the press release for product A. So we've already drafted a press release. The goal is to decide to approve the press release. Hopefully people have already looked at it. There have been some discussions pre-meeting. And so here the goal is to just decide on it. And the last one, share the suggested approach to interview the priority customers. So which customers, there's probably they've shortlisted the customers they want to interview, the questions, and this is just to share and probably have a bit of a discussion. I don't think it doesn't look like they're ready to make a final call. Probably some senior executives are interested in chiming in. Maybe we should sub out this customer, instead bring this customer in and interview that one. It's an opportunity for people to share their thoughts. And so as you can see, this is a bit more, and I also added selective bolding here at the top. So it's quickly, when somebody opens the invite, they see a new product, launch project. So it's clear it's part of this project to launch a new product. And then there are 3 bullet points of 3 separate agenda items. That's how the meeting will probably be structured, with owners for each of them. So I think that's a improved version of a meeting invite. Quick, easy to understand, and nicely structured. I hope you came up with something similar. We don't know enough of the context, so there is hundreds of different good versions, I would say. So lastly, lessons learned. In this section, we talked about overall the logistics of the last step of the meeting preparation, the meeting invites, how to schedule a meeting effectively. It was a quick session, and we talked about to always suggest a meeting time and alternatives. Always go in with a default time, as opposed to giving the attendees the option to decide which time to go for. Then we talked about sending a meeting invite to all attendees. This is pretty standard already, but it's important to still do it. Otherwise, people won't show up. And lastly, sharing materials. We didn't really talk about this one. It's another best practice of if there are some materials that people need to read or digest before the meeting, to share them at least 24 hours in advance. If you share it the same day, they might have meetings back to back. They might have not enough time to actually even open the document and look over it for 10-15 minutes. By sharing 24 hours in advance, at least better 2-3 days, you can assume that they will find, if it's important to them, they will find time before the meeting to flip through it and take some notes or whatever is asked of them.